Hello, my name is Brendan Berry. I am a client manager on the mental health and addiction recovery services team at MusiCares, and really excited to launch our 5th episode of the Sober 21 and MusiCares Musicians in Recovery series. We're super stoked to have our two incredible musicians, two legendary rock guitarists joining us today. And I wanted to first explain what MusiCares is and what we do. So MusiCares is a safety net for music industry professionals, whether you're a tour bus driver, a manager, or a musician, or a roadie. We are here to cover you during hard times. Under the umbrella of MusiCares, we have 3 different branches. The human services team will help you out if you fall on hard times or having a difficult time paying any bills. We will help you get them paid, whether that's your rent, mortgage, car payment. Our health services team will help you pay for your medical bills, your dental bills, help you get medical and dental treatment. And then the team that I work on, mental health and addiction recovery services, if you are struggling with mental health, or anything related to substance use disorder, addiction of any kind, sex addiction, gambling addiction, substance abuse, give us a call, shoot us an email. We will hop on the phone with you, talk about what you're going through, figure out what the right form of treatment is for you. And then we will hook you up with that treatment and pay for most, if not all of it. We have put many, many people through rehab, inpatient, outpatient. If you don't know what those things are and you just want an education, give us a call. We will help give you some of that education. We just want to love you up and get you some help. So on that note, we are here today to help normalize conversations about recovery, the other side of addiction, because it is not just doom and gloom. There is a beautiful other side to it, and we have some amazing representatives of what recovery looks like. First, we have Nita Strauss, who is currently the touring rock and metal guitarist for Demi Lovato and Alice Cooper. She is ranked #1 on the Guitar World list of 10 female guitar players you should know. Nita also released her 2nd studio album, The Call of the Void, in which she collaborated with some of the most legendary metal musicians in the world. Thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us today, Nita.
Thanks a lot for having me. It's an absolute honor to be here.
Hell yeah. And we also have Ricky Byrd, who is a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee, guitarist, vocalist, songwriter, and producer. Ricky played with Joan, Jett, and the Blackhearts for over a decade. He has recorded, shared the stage with, or toured with nearly every major name in the rock world, including Joe Walsh, Alice Cooper, the Beach Boys, Jimmy Page, Bruce Springsteen, Steve Miller, Billy Joe Armstrong, Graham Nash, Elvis Costello, and the list goes on and on. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ricky.
You forgot Peter Zadora.
Sorry.
It's great to be here, man. I love talking about recovery.
Amazing. And then lastly, we have Elia Einhorn, who is a Webby Award-winning music podcast host and Audie-nominated recording engineer. He is a host and producer for Sonos Radio, Pitchfork Radio and TV, and Special Talk House podcasts. Elia was frontman of the critically acclaimed indie punk band, the Scotland Yard Gospel Choir, and is the songwriter and producer for the new collaborations-based project, Fashion Brigade. Most importantly, Elia is here with us today as a person in long-term recovery and the creator of the published inspiration for this series, Sober 21. Elia, my man, known you for many years. Can you tell us a little bit about Sober 21 and what inspired this important work?
Hey man, great to be here. Great to be here. And it's hard to follow these legends in the bios, but yeah, I was touring for a decade really hard, and I was out about being sober in the music community, and in some of my interviews I talked about it. And so I found that a lot of musicians were coming to me saying they need to get sober, and they all had the same fears. They all thought their career was over. They all thought it was done. They all thought they were washed up and they could never do it again. And I kept thinking, you all have no idea about the community that exists, and we got to build this community and include all of you. So I put together Sober 21, which was a downloadable PDF and a book through the Creative Independent, and man, it just took off. It was really wild. It took off massive coverage, and it was given away for free everywhere from therapist's office to music festivals to merch tables. So it's been really an amazing thing to watch happen. And parenthetically, I donated the money we got for publishing this. None of us took any money for it to MusiCares, because you all were the ones who I knew who had helped so many people that I knew in recovery. Yeah, man.
Amazing. And I just want to share a quick story before we get into this conversation, because this is exactly why we're doing this work. But 2 weeks ago, I got a call from a young man asking for help with recovery and with treatment. And I spent about an hour on the phone with him, and I gave him a little bit of information. We decided to pick back up the next day, and we spoke for another 2 hours. And in the middle of the conversation, he said, I read this publication where musicians were sharing their stories about being in recovery. And I said, was that Sober 21? And he said, yeah, that was it. He said, I read that thing and I thought to myself for the first time, like, if they can do it, I can do it. And that's when he picked up the phone and he called MusiCares. And he knew nothing about what treatment looked like, whether it's IOP, outpatient, inpatient. And so I gave him some education around that. And then he talked about, well, I've got these gig dates coming up around the country, and I've got these projects I'm working on in the studio. We talked it through and we figured out, like, hey, can we, table the studio work? And is it possible to cancel those tour dates? See if you can find some people to replace you. And he said, yeah, I think that I can. The next day, that kid was on a plane flying to world-class treatment in Utah, and MusiCares is footing the bill.
Yes.
Wow.
Man, you're going to have me tearing up on camera here. That's beautiful.
That's
beautiful.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And that's why it's so important to be able to share these stories and show other musicians that if you all can do it, they can do it. Anyone can do it.
Yeah,
but
man.
I just wanted to share that story because it's so
Thank
powerful.
you.
And that's why we're continuing to have these conversations. So with that, I don't know, Elia, you want to jump into some of these?
The bottom line, if I could just may add to what you said,
Yeah.
is I found drugs and alcohol all over the world. And when I got clean in '87, I found meetings all over the world. See, and I went to those meetings in all really wonderful places. Sometimes people didn't even speak English, but when they would laugh, I would laugh, so I didn't look stupid sitting there. But, I've been in Stockholm meetings, in London, and Italy, and that's the beauty of community support group meetings and community, is that it's the same message all over the world, no matter where you go. So as a touring musician, I had it a little tougher at the beginning because there wasn't any. The amount of I didn't go to treatment. Somebody took me to my first community support group meeting in New York, and I was just off the road for a couple of weeks, and then I went back on the road with Joan, in a pretty an active environment. Not saying who did it or who didn't do it, but there was plenty there. Well, yeah, not everybody drinks and drugs like a freaking animal like I did,
but being on tour.
But the point is I was right in the middle of it, and on the tour bus, I was hiding in my bunk for a while, and I just had a lot of phone numbers, and I just changed my touring thing. Took a while, from being up all night after a show and then not doing anything, to getting, as soon as I pulled into town, I started to call, community intergroups, and I would call people and say, hey man, I'm staying at the Hyatt and I'll be here for 2 days. Is there something going on? And they'd say, yeah, we could come pick you up. So, you have to be your own advocate. And if you're done, bro, if you want to be done, you're going to be done. If you're going to play games, then you're going to keep falling off. But
and Ricky, how long have you been done for now, man? Because you just celebrated a big anniversary, I think.
Well, it's 36 years, September 25th.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. And
Amazing.
Nita, you just had a big anniversary. Tell us,
Yes.
where are you coming in?
8 years on September 6th.
Yes.
So yes.
Incredible.
Congratulations.
Incredible.
Thank
And
you.
look,
Yeah,
you're
Ricky,
out there
your birthday
doing
is your sober birthday is the year of my actual birthday.
87?
Love it.
86.
Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing.
Hell yeah. I love it. Nita, you're coming in from tour right now. Where are you? And I know Ricky, you're in New York like myself. Nita, where are you?
I'm in Cincinnati. We are on the Freaks on Parade tour. It's Alice Cooper, Rob Zombie,
Love
Ministry,
it.
and Filter. So really, really fun tour. Actually, we just missed you guys. We were just at Jones Beach. I would have loved to say hello a
Oh
couple days
man.
ago.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah.
that on Facebook today. I'm like, oh man.
Ah, boo. Yeah, too bad we
Yeah,
all missed
because
each
my
other.
my my wife did Alice's publicity for a while, on a couple of years
Oh,
back.
wow.
So
That's
yeah, we know
amazing.
Alice is a pal.
Oh, well, we'd love to see you guys next time.
Well, we're talking about these anniversaries, and it makes me wonder, like, where exactly were each of you at in your respective careers when you hit bottom? When that moment happened where you were like, I can't take it anymore. I need help.
I'll
Please.
defer to Ricky.
Uh-oh. Where was I? Um, well, I was on tour. I played with Joan from 81 to 91, and then I came back for a VH1 special at one point. But so I got sober in 87, and I started using when I was 13. Now, it wasn't all bad, but at the end of the 70s, and I do have this in my family. Let me just make that point. My
Mhm.
dad and his father, and my uncle's got like 40 something years sober, my dad's brother. But it got bad, like it started to get bad in late 70s when like cocaine was introduced to the music community. And of course, it was there in the 40s and the 30s, but it all goes through cycles. And that, with the combination of everything else, was the start of the spiraling. And it took until 87. By the end, it was fairly nasty. And I was on the road. You know what it's like, Nita. You're on the road all the time. Then you come home and you record a record, and you're on the road all the time.
Yep.
So I just the bottom was that. The bottom was one night, and it wasn't even one of the worst nights, but it was one night I remember standing in front of the mirror at 2 in the morning. And, people of my generation, we all looked up to Keith Richards and that whole thing, you know.
The
And
heroin chic sort of.
yeah, but just in general, we were living that life. And I look in the mirror and I'm like, wow, I was 128 pounds, and I was just like, okay, this is not going to end well, you know. And I picked up the phone at 2 in the morning and I called a girl. I'll backtrack. I called a girl. We went to a wedding in August of 87. And I sat next, they put you at a table with people you know. And we were sitting next to a girl we would use with occasionally, right? And I leaned into her as I would anywhere. And I whispered my two favorite words at the time, which was, you holding? And she went into this whole thing. No, I go to these meetings and I'm da da da. Of course, at that point, that's all I heard, and I was looking around the room for somebody else. But she kept talking. She planted a seed,
Next.
next, and that's who I called that night at 2 in the morning. And she said, "Can you make it through until tomorrow?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so." And she took me to my first community support group meeting in Manhattan, and I walked in, and nobody looked like me. I just came off the road, man. I had like a black leather jacket. My hair was like down to here, and everybody was like business people and this and that. But dude, when they started sharing, I just went, wow, that's weird. It's the same share. And I started talking to people and people came up to me and I was just sold. I feel bad for people that walk into community support group meetings and go, I don't like these meetings. I just walked in, I went, this is really cool. Why? Well, we all want to be part of something, right? And when we were teenagers, I wanted to be in a band. I wanted to be in a gang. I wanted to be with friends that thought like me, that did things like me. And now I found people that were like-minded like me about stopping. So that was the beginning. Now, interestingly enough, a year before that, when I was turning 30, I said, "That's it. I'm done. Done." You know. And that year, I have my diary from that year. That was the toughest year because that was the year that I really acknowledged, oh crap, I can't stop on my own.
Hmm.
Because I'm
And
easily led. You know what I mean?
That's one of the big moments. And so for you, Ricky, it comes at a time when you're already very successful. You've got a couple platinum records with Joan Jett and the Blackhearts in the bag.
Playing stadiums, man. You know, the
Playing
whole thing.
stadiums. I mean, you are a rock star at this point. Nita, what was it like for you? You know, we're looking back 8 years. Where were you at in your career?
So for me, my rock bottom, I think, looks a little different than a lot of other people's because I was very, very highly functioning throughout all of my active addiction. Ups and downs with cocaine, with crystal meth, and then using alcohol from the time that I was a teenager, all the way up until I got sober. I started touring really young. I started touring at 15. I was in bands,
Whoa.
likely most of the time being the only girl in the band, being younger than everyone else in the band, going out and playing shows at 13, 14. And as you guys know, alcohol is the great equalizer. You want to get to know somebody, you have a beer with them. And like that was sort of how I fit in as a weird, awkward kid in the metal scene in LA. It was just like, oh yeah, I can drink anybody under the table. I kind of developed that reputation of, just being able to hang with the big boys and party and play fast guitar. And, I was touring all over the world. By the time I got sober, I was on the Motley Crue Alice Cooper tour in 2015 when I finally got sober. One of the biggest tours of my life, playing stadiums all over the world. Um, and it was just this moment, like, exactly as Ricky said, it wasn't the worst night. It wasn't like the worst I had ever been, but it was the time of like, I was at the highest point of my career. I was doing the best I had ever done, but my
Mm.
personal life was in a shambles. My parents were worried about me all the time. I was fighting with my boyfriend, who's now my fiance. Um, and everything, I was unhealthy, I was fat, I was miserable, I was hungover all the time. I couldn't go on stage without having something, little liquid courage to get me, onto the stage and through the show. And that was just this moment. It was like one final blowout fight with my boyfriend when we both were like, this has to stop and it has to stop
Mm.
today, or it's not gonna, it's not gonna end well for any of us. So that was my moment. And for me, I didn't find that community until much, much, much later on. I don't have a lot of sober friends. I actually didn't really have a lot of sober friends until I started playing with Demi Lovato last year. And she, of course, is in very active recovery and knows all the tricks and all the, the good mental places to get to when you're really feeling like that. But for me, it was a lot of white knuckling and a lot of crying those first few years.
I mean, I tell people when they come to me looking for help, sometimes it gets a little worse before it gets better, but then it gets much, much better.
Well,
Um,
you're living you're used to this one thing.
Mhm.
Like you get into, so you play your show, and if you're traveling, you get on a bus, and on the bus is beer, Jack Daniels, and usually every drug you take. So that's that, right? And once again, not everybody, but the people I hung out with on the bus, and
we find our own.
yeah, we find our own. Or if you're in the hotel, what do? You go to the bar, right? And you get
Yeah.
drunk until the bar closes, and then somebody goes, "Let's go to my room. I picked up some," and then you sleep all day the next day until it's time to play again. So now you got a whole different world. And the other thing on what she was saying, remember we're in a business, less now than it was then, because then the record companies, I mean, huge budgets, and as long as you produced hit records, nobody bothered you. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there were budgets, right? They would be cocaine on the, not on our thing, but there would be cocaine on a budget for certain bands for the studio. But once again, not on the Blackhearts. But the point is that we come from a place where really nobody was saying, "Hey, you know what? You should slow down a little bit." And you know who told me to slow down? So I was lucky. Humble Pie was like one of my favorite bands when I was a kid. I got to be very friendly with Steve Marriott, and I remember after Humble Pie, he had another band, and they were parked in front of the Cat Club in New York. If you remember the Cat Club, he had a little three-piece, and we were on the bus, and we were getting high, and I kept taking it. I kept taking it from him, and he said to me, now he was notorious, right? Like his stories, the stories about Steve is notorious. He'd say to me, "Ricky, you might want to cut down." And my brain went, oh, that's not a good sign.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
If the guy who's using the most is telling you to chill out, right? Well, but this gets into something I want to talk about. I mean, you're sharing the story about touring and all this shipping on the bus and made available to us. Nita, you were just talking about Demi, and I mean, it's very profound to have you and Demi touring together as two sober people. Um, I wonder, like, with both of you being in recovery, are there any rituals that you've created together around your sobriety that you bring on the road?
I wouldn't say ritual necessarily. I think that one thing that Demi and I have in common in our recovery is like we both and all of us really, you have access to it all the time. If you want to drink, you're going to drink, so there has to
Definitely.
be at some point, and everyone's recovery trajectory is different, there's no right way or wrong way to do it as long as you're sticking to the plan and staying sober. But like for me, getting off the road and having someone sub out my gigs would have never been an option. Like I would go on stage and I would hit that 90 minutes as hard as I can, and then I'd run to my room and cry, and
Mhm.
feel insecure. And like like my first sober show was in Detroit at Pine Knob, big amphitheater,
Ooh, love Pine Knob.
20,000 people, love Pine Knob, you know it very well, of course. And I just remember this is before I was fully sober, but I decided to not drink before going on stage for the first time of this tour.
Mm.
And I did this show, we're on tour with Motley Crue. There's 15, 20,000 people there. And I just remember being stuck in one place. And I had to tell myself, like, all right, just take a step forward, take a step back. And I was so shy and I was so insecure. And it's not my normal stage persona at all. It couldn't be more opposite to how I normally am, confident, flying all over the place.
You're
And I
Hurricane Nita.
remember exactly, exactly. did not live up to my name that day, I thought. So I did the show, ran back to my dressing room, shaking, so angry at myself for letting it get to this point, pounded 2 Coronas, cleaned myself up, went out to the guest area. And guess what? Every single person in there, I said, "Oh my God, it was so good. You had so much energy. The show was so great. Everything was so awesome." It was my first tour with Alice, and, people were still seeing me for the first time. And I was like, oh, so that was all in here. Not a single shred of it actually showed to anybody out there in the audience. And that's when I realized you just have to confront these mental things first, and then everything else will fall into place.
Well, Nita, that the whole disease and thing, it is all in here.
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
the
Yes.
whole problem is in here.
Yeah.
So yeah, but when you wanna, like, I was done. And I went and got certified as a counselor and a sober coach. I haven't put it to much use. Right before the pandemic, I worked in a place for like 3 months. Not sure it's for me. I'd rather help in my way. But I would talk about being done, and there's a difference between being done up here and being done in here. I'm pointing my heart somewhere around here. You know, and that's the deal. And I would say to these, I'd be sitting in front of 70 people in a treatment facility and say, here's the deal. If you're done, I'd say, how many people are done? And the whole group, they'd all raise their hand. Yeah, why? Because they're in treatment and they probably just went through some horrible stuff. I say, yeah, well, that's logical. That's logic. But how many are done like in here? And then I'd say, and they'd say, like, what does that mean? I'd say, well, let's say you're sitting here in treatment and and you're getting out tomorrow, see, and at home in your t-shirt drawer, 3 t-shirts down, you got 7 bags of dope. If you call somebody at home and say, I want you to go throw that crap out, you're on the road, baby. Now you're on the right path. If you think you're going to go home, like if you talk yourself into, I'm going to go home, I could throw it out myself, it'll be fine. That never happens. Very rarely does it happen. And to me, those kind of actions show you when you're actually done in your heart. When you stop screwing with yourself. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I could go. Because when I first got clean, man, and sober, I would hang out after the show in the bar with the guys drinking club sodas and go to a room where people were doing blow and sit there, no, I'm clean now. Until the guy I was working with, in recovery said, that probably isn't such a good idea. So I started to just go back to my room and call somebody. I was very lucky at the beginning when I got sober. We were pretty much on tour with Aerosmith, and they had just gotten sober. So I had a lot of camaraderie with those guys.
I had to watch an Aerosmith sobriety video in rehab.
Oh, did you really?
True story. But
well, we would go before the show, before we went on, hey, Stephen would go, Ricky, come in. And they would have a little group recovery hug. See?
Oh, it's beautiful.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And that really helped me. So, you got to find it, dude. If you're done and you're about to die, then what does it say? We will go, half measures avail us nothing. We will go to any length to get sober, and you got to really do it, because these days your next get high could be your last.
Yeah.
But
I was lucky in that way too. I'm sorry.
Please.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Oh, I was just going to say I was really lucky and blessed in that way too, because we were out with Motley Crue and I was able to talk to
Nikki.
Alice and talk to Nikki, and both of them, had such different, such unique perspectives. And I always have been that person that will just approach people and talk about their experiences. So, I asked Nikki, we did, a show with Black Label Society, and I asked Zach Wilde, I've had the privilege to be able to ask so many different people just in our place of work, like, hey, what did you do? How do you think about this? What are some of your mental places that you go to get through these days and these shows and each thing? So it's so powerful to just ask the people around you what works for them.
It's very difficult to do by yourself. And that's why it's important, no matter what you believe in, whatever thing, if you go to meetings, if you go to church, whatever you do, like my logic, I always used to share, whatever keeps you on the right side of the grass, baby, keep doing it. But with that said, it's very difficult to be on your own. And if you're a real dyed-in-the-wool addict, alcoholic, to not have people to talk to, when you start isolating, what's the thing? When I'm alone with a murderer, So it's, I suggest to people, whatever your choices are, whatever kind of smart recovery, this recovery, just try to keep it, find some sort of sober community where you can call people when you're having that moment where your brain says, you know what, you weren't that bad.
I wanted to add one thing to what you were saying, Ricky, because I think you're talking about something really powerful, which is when you're done, you're done. And when that moment comes and you feel it, all of a sudden, it enables you to do other stuff if you want to, or if business calls for it, right? Like sometimes you do just want to go back to your room, but like last night I was at a Crass show. I was at the Steve Ignorant Crass show, hanging out with Steve, and he's having a pint like a normal person, and I can just hang there and drink my cranberry juice and soda, and I can be around situations where everyone in the band is having a pint, and I'm okay. And like I remember one time getting offered to smoke weed with the Wu-Tang Clan, and I was like, once I've said no to smoking weed with the Wu-Tang Clan, I could pretty much say no to anyone and still be able to hang,
Right, and, but you do agree,
and it's a beautiful moment.
We are stronger when we're working, when we're doing the deal.
Absolutely. Oh no, I'm saying this as an addendum to what you're saying, because if you're not done, and if you haven't built that community, those are not safe spaces, man. This took me
but you can
years
be done,
of sobriety to get to.
Like if I could clarify, you could be done. Like I'm done. I'm sitting here talking to you. I'm done, right? If you miss 5 weeks of talking to people in recovery and you let the maniac behavior get back in your brain, done turns into like, maybe I could just do a little.
Into done?
To some people.
Mark?
Yeah. So I just want to clarify. We're done. To me, we're done a day at a time. And listen, I'm a total abstinence guy, which is interesting because going for a counseling certification, that's total abstinence. Recovery coaching is you're in recovery when you say you are, and I had to like go what. And figure out what that was all about, which came to my thing is like, it's none of my business. Whatever, as long as you don't die, I'm good with you, But I think that to me, I wouldn't trust, like 36 years, right? Like I would say, people go to me, dude, can't you just have a Heineken or something? I'm like, yeah, I might be able to, but why would I take the chance? I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
your body chemistry changes. Maybe my brain changes after all these years. Do I want to take the chance? It's like you're playing the odds. Like, why would I do that?
It's Russian roulette. Yeah.
Yeah. And in my experience, because I don't have a strong sober community around me, but I do have a lot of people that are not in recovery that really love me, and which
Mhm.
I'm very, very lucky for. So for example, my solo band is not sober. They drink, they smoke weed. The Alice Cooper guys, aside from Alice himself, they have their wine, they do their stuff, but every single one of them would lay down their life before they let me have a drink. And that's to me the big difference, where somebody doesn't have to be in active recovery to be a good support system. And that's true, they don't always understand everything that I'm going through. Like, a good example is the other day, the guys had this really nice bottle of bourbon, like I don't remember what it was, but it was something they were all really excited about. Someone had brought a gift to the dressing room, and we all gathered around for our pre-show ritual. We all put our hands in there, go like, hey guys, let's all have a little sip of this before the show. Like, everybody, all right, you got one, you got one. Not you, Nita, we got one. And I had that moment of like, what do you mean not you, Nita? Why everybody else and not me? And then I started having this cycle of like, maybe it would be okay. Maybe why everybody else and not me? And I know that it was the opposite of hurtful. I know that he meant to say not you, because we are aware that you're in recovery. We would never put you in that situation. But
Mhm.
that's, sort of this situation where you get with people that aren't active in recovery and don't understand how these words can sometimes affect you.
Mhm.
And you could be, to what you're saying, you could be in a place with a band and everybody's getting high and drinking. But, I have tools that I've learned in 36 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's people I call that are not in the music business. I'll go back to my room and say, hey, man, I'm just feeling a little itchy, or I read something out of like a daily meditation thing, or I look in the mirror and go, dude, you want to go through that crap again? So we have to be, we're professionals, right? So we have to go on the road and be with people. Some of them are still doing the deal, and some of them aren't. I just think, to me, it's a good idea, or it's a good suggestion, to have somebody that you could, people that you can, even if it's not in your environment, that you could rely on, that you could call at 2 o'clock in the morning if you get that weird feeling. Because, that weird
Yep.
feeling into the
Yep.
action is like that. Just that fast, man. You know, I'm good. It's like the guy that's got 40 years, and it's a hot August day, and he walks past his favorite old bar in Manhattan, and the door opens up, and he feels the air conditioning, and he sees people smiling and singing and laughing, and they're playing rock and roll on the jukebox, and he goes, you know what? I'm going to sit at the bar and just have a club soda. And you go in there, and how long does it take before a club soda turns into something else? I don't know. I mean, maybe he's fine. I mean, I could sit in the club. I do what you do. I taught myself tricks when I play a gig. It's like I do an event at the winery, let's say.
Mm.
First thing I do is I go to the bar and I order myself cranberry juice with pineapple and club soda.
Oh,
Why?
I gotta try the
Yeah.
pineapple twist in there,
It's
man.
I do the
good.
club soda and pineapple. That's mine.
It's good, man. And why do I do it? Because it's also like part of the drinking and drugging was the paraphernalia for me.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like the spoon around the neck, and the freaking grinder, and the this, and the glasses, the wine glasses, and the beer bottles. So I like to have something in my hand. See, and also, yes, and if I'm walking around a club that I'm playing, and I have this in my hand and I'm sipping from it, the chances are less that somebody's going, hey, Rick, can I get you a drink?
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
just you just teach yourself tricks to do it, and you just do it. You got to keep, dude. It's a bridge back to life. You can't hide in the basement. Although I am hiding in the basement right now.
That's a very cool basement, to be fair. You got the axes back there. You got some.
Hey, Nita, you see that Les Paul? Can you see that?
Let me look. Oh, yes, I see it now.
That's
Mhm.
my Blue
Beautiful.
Sparkle 75 Les Paul that I actually got from G.E. Smith, that I used in the Hate Myself for Loving video. That
Wow.
Oh,
that is one of the
damn.
Legendary.
that is one of the best sounding Les Pauls I've ever played. It's just got
Yes.
Incredible.
it screams. Sorry, I had
And
a
now I get to play your riffs all the time with the Rams for
oh,
the
isn't that
Sunday Night
cool?
Football theme.
Excellent.
Nice. Yes.
I
What?
just wanted to add to what you were just saying quickly, and that is, so I went to my first support meeting last year, 7 years of sobriety, and I'd never gone to a meeting, and then I went to my first one last year, and that was when I really started understanding how much good could come from the literature and from everything else. And the biggest takeaway for me is actually one that I learned from Demi, which you guys will be all too familiar with, which is playing the tape.
Hmm.
Playing the tape, because I was talking to Demi when we were rehearsing for something. We were actually at her house in her home studio, me with the acoustic guitar, she's sitting there singing her ass off. And then we started talking about recovery sort of in the middle of it. And I said, do you ever have this moment where you just like, I could just go have a drink right now. Like I could just go do it. I could leave your house right now and I could go to 7-Eleven and, get a bottle. And she goes, well, did you play the tape? And I was like, what does that mean? She goes, why don't you play the tape for me out loud right now? And so we played the tape and said, where
To
do
the
you go
end,
from
all the way
here?
to the end.
To the end. Exactly. And this is a totally new, I had never heard of this before. She goes, well, where do you go? And I go, okay, I'm going to leave your house. I'm going to go to this liquor store. And she goes, what do you get? And I go, I'm going to get a bottle of vodka. She goes, okay, do you go home and drink it? Do you tell your boyfriend or do you drink it in the car and then lie to him? I was like, I think I'd tell him because he's not in recovery. I was like, I think I'd go home and tell him. She goes, okay, then what? Do you finish it? Do you only have a glass? And so we played the tape all the way to the end. And by the end of it, I was like, what a terrible fucking idea that was. Like it
Yes.
seems like a good idea when you're just looking at the immediate, and we as addicts are all about the immediate gratification,
Instant
not the long-term
gratification, man.
solution. Exactly. So for me, the most valuable tool is one that I've learned in this last 6 months, which was playing the tape.
And there's a million little sayings in the rooms. That's a saying that's been hearing for 36 years. It's like we have built-in forgetters, which the voice in your head tells you, you know what? Let me just get a six-pack, or I could just do, I mean, it's cunning and insidious, yeah, at this point, like I would get up. So I went through a thing where I was waking up frantic for a little while in recovery, a long time, like last year or something. And I would say, I called my guy, could I say sponsor? I could say sponsor. And I said to him, dude, I keep waking up like with this doom and gloom. And he said, oh, come on, that's the disease waking up before you, man. And I went, oh, right, I knew that. I mean, it doesn't go away. See, it's just a daily reprieve from this thing in your head. Because there's a couple of parts to addiction. There's the allergy they talk about, right? Which is a physical allergy, which my dad had, and his father had. So when I have the first one, and scientifically, they've shown when somebody that has this wiring, your brain lights up like a freaking pinball machine when you do something that gives you instant gratification. It could be at a casino, and it's different from other people. And then that's when you do the first one. That's when all bets are off. But what about before that? Like what would make somebody who's been down so many times, on the mat with the ref count, 2, 3, out. Like what would make you do it again? That's the cunning, insidious part. The part that tells you I could do it, one more time. I could just do it one more time. And that what I was saying before is when I was turning 30 and I wanted to stop, I had spent a year when I finally acknowledged, oh crap, I got a problem, where every day it would be like, okay, in my diary, we're going to go out for dinner tonight. I'm going to, have a nice meal. I'll have a club soda. And then the next day would be, okay, tonight I'm going to start, And this went on.
Man. The
this
diary,
went on from,
right?
Yeah,
Yep.
this went on from October of 86 to September 25th of '87. Every day, bro, it was the same thing in my diary. I could not stop. If I went to a club, hey Ricky, come on, come in the bathroom. I was just so easily led until I stopped. Now I'm not easily led, but we can and do recover, man. That's the big message. Peers of mine in the music business, when I see them still at this point, still doing that, I'm going, oh, dude, give me a ring, man. Give me a shout.
Ricky, that's why I started Sober 21, man. I thought, like, I want everyone to at least know that recovery is possible. And then if they want to take us up on that, that's up to them, right? But at least
we can't get people clean. We could just show them we could just show them where the water is.
Bring the horse to the water, man. Yeah.
One of the things that I love about this conversation is we're hearing different sides and experiences of what recovery can look like. There's not a one size fits all for everyone. On the note of the media, we're seeing something that's dramatized, glorified, sensationalized. And, as viewers, we don't have the opportunity necessarily to hear the experience directly from the individual who is struggling or thriving. We're just getting one side of the story that's being dramatized by the media. And so, again, one of the reasons why Elia created Sober 21, one of the reasons why we're having this conversation is so you can hear what that experience might look like through somebody else's eyes, what it might look like through their lived experience, and allow that to be a guiding star. If it can be your path to recovery, or at least plants a seed, right? Because, I think, Elia, you said it, like, when you're done, you're done. When you're ready, you're ready. Each of you shared about the individuals who had an impact and influence in your lives and shared their journeys with you and shared their stories. And, I know for me, same deal. There were people who impacted my life from beginning to end. The first time that I sat down to collaborate on writing music with another artist, I started having a panic attack and I couldn't figure it out. And I was talking to like a spiritual guy later, and he was like, well, did you ever do that sober before? And I was like, no, I had specific drugs for that part of my physical experience. And so, like, first time I'm doing that sober, and I needed to walk through that experience sober and have some people to hold my hand along the way. And Nita, I loved hearing you talk about how, like, whether people are sober or not, like, you have people who love you and care about you and will, like, stand in front of the bullet before you pick up that first drink. And
all day long.
So the only difference is of having some people in the recovery communities is they know exactly what you're feeling.
Yeah.
So people love you, but that doesn't mean that they understand what it's like to have the itch.
100% true.
So it's a good balance. It's just have a bunch of people. And let me clarify, what I said was not about what Demi said, because I think she's great.
Oh yeah.
It's about how the media framed both of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a shame because they don't realize how many people that grow up listening to you will take that and run with it.
Totally agree.
I mean, could you imagine Prince and freaking Tom Petty we lost because of drugs and medical drugs, right? Like fentanyl, like knee operations and this and that. It's unbelievable.
Al Rogers told me in his Sober 21 interview, he says, it's so crazy. I never knew Prince to use,
Yeah, he was supposed to be this like
Bowie,
clean.
Yeah, he used David Bowie. He said had the Serenity Prayer tattooed on his leg, Wow. But Prince, no, it's
And let me ask you, Nita, if I'm curious about your, like, when I went back out on the road, there's something that goes on not just in the music world, but where you kind of get what's the word I want to use? Like the people around you that you used to use with, they kind of ignore you almost like you get, there's an isolation thing that happens that you have to work through because people think they're doing some people are just assholes and they're just like, oh, Mr. 12 step, I don't want to hang out with him. He's no fun anymore. And then there's people that think they're doing you a favor by not inviting you to parties and, on the road, or let's not invite her because, we don't want her to get. But to you, it hurts. Like, it's like, well, damn, man, what happened to all my pals,
Yes.
And it's common.
That's true.
And it's not only in the music world. It's like people, like, you lose your crew, so to speak,
Yeah. So I definitely found that my friend circle dwindled very, very quickly. Um, and again, as I said, my core people that I tour with are not sober. And so the guys in the Alice band, it's like literally being in a band with my brothers. I've been
Right.
in the road with them for the better part of a decade. I've been touring full time for 21 years now. I've been with these guys almost a decade. And they and I have this very beautiful silent understanding where they know that I want to be invited to everything, but they also know that I probably won't go.
That's funny.
Like they make
But
me
it's nice
feel
of it's
included.
nice of them to ask.
So they ask literally almost every day. Somebody say, "Hey, we're going to go to the steakhouse. We're going to go to this," and they'll send it to the group chat, and I'll say, "Thank you so much for the invite. I think I'm going to stay in." And there's no one ever gets hurt feelings. And on the odd chance that they do all go somewhere and don't invite me, I absolutely do get hurt feelings. And I text them, "Hey, how come no one told me y'all were going to the steakhouse?" You know. But it's having the understanding with the people that are around you, that perhaps are not in the same phase of life as you are, where they're like, "Hey, you know what? The guys are going to go out to the steakhouse and probably meet some fans there and have a ton of wine and enjoy their day off." And as well they should. And I'm going to stay in my room. I'm going to watch my shows. I'm going to get some work done. I'm going to do some wedding planning and, whatever it is that I'm doing with my day off. And there's no resentment and everyone feels included and no one feels snubbed. And it just kind
And
of
when you're ready,
works.
you could go have a steak dinner with them, and they could drink wine, and you don't drink wine.
Oh, yeah, all the
Just
time. We go out as a
Get
group
that cranberry and
all the
seltzer with a
time.
little pineapple. Yeah.
Exactly. We go out as a group quite often. There's never any pressure on anybody to drink or not drink. While it's not a recovery focused environment the way that touring with Demi was, being out here is a really supportive
And I
environment.
know it was at Aerosmith. I know it was very strict back then, backstage. No beers, no. Well, the road, everybody had to be sober, right? But here's
Yeah.
another question for you. So I didn't really. Oh, I could count on one hand the amount of times that I was like loaded on stage. Like I did blow before a show like 3 times, and I went, okay, this is not a good idea. Because by the second song is like I wanted to go back out and do more. But so like yeah, I would have a drink. I would have a Heineken or two on stage, or I would maybe smoke a joint backstage or something like that. I was never really loaded. Like I said, a few times, but we don't have to get into that. What was it like for you? Like my transition was like easy. I guess maybe I'm just a hammer or something. Like I wasn't afraid when I came, like when I walked out on stage that first time sober, I was just like, wow, this is cool, man. I like this. This is kind of good. I wouldn't trip over the
Yeah.
monitors by accident. You know, I thought it was kind of like I didn't have that problem. What about you?
I definitely did. Yeah. I was the type to go on stage pretty tipsy though. And was for many, many years, playing in club bands. I would get off stage like completely unable to walk straight, and
Uh-huh.
that was sort of my process. And at the time it was really fun, and it was sort of what I was known for, was being that sort of hard partying metal chick, like I built a lot of my identity around it. And I think it also
I
didn't
know
do me
that
any
feeling.
favors. I don't think it did me any favors, stopping drinking before shows versus stopping drinking altogether, because it was just delaying the gratification. I was just like, "Oh God, I gotta wait till after I get off from the show before I can start having fun." So it took me several months to really feel at home
To find your
on
footing.
stage. Exactly, perfectly put. But now I just can't imagine any other way. I mean, I'm so clear-headed. I used to almost treat it like a video game where we were just like, oh, you're driving the car in the video game and you want to see how fast you can go without crashing. And like that's how I felt,
And could you
getting
imagine?
drunk.
Could you imagine being on stage in a stadium, and all you could think about is like, how many more songs before I can get back to my room and do some stuff? How ungrateful
Exactly.
is
Yeah,
that for the gift that you've been
exactly.
giving?
And
To be
how how ungrateful not only to the opportunity but to your audience,
of
your audience
course,
who's there. They saved their money, they bought their seats, they drove, sometimes took a plane, got hotels, drove for hours and hours, stood in line, waited to get the spot in the barricade. And there I am, not even putting their experience first but putting
right.
my own experience first. Like I can't imagine being that selfish to my audience now, much less to myself.
Because we become better people, and
Yeah.
to clarify, even though I didn't like my stuff was on like after the show or back in New York or traveling with this, you know. But that's not to say that I wasn't hungover on stage, or you know, I did too many pills the night before, and I could, you know, I was a little feeling no pain. But to what you were saying, Brendan, about songwriting, that's another common problem I hear from people in the music business. Like, dude, I can't write a song, you know, now that I'm sober. And MusiCares had me do a couple of workshops, facilitate a couple of workshops in New York with like a group. It was in a treatment facility, actually, somewhere on Fifth Avenue or Sixth Avenue, where there was like, you know, 10 or 12 people, you know, men and women, all songwriters, a couple of them that famous songwriters and a couple of people that were brand new. And they were all going through the same thing. And because I had the experience of doing these recovery records, you know, I was asked to do these things. And it was interesting to hear people talk about that. It's like, man, I got nothing to say. It's like, let me hear, do you have anything about recovery? And they'd play me something. I'm like, dude, do you know how many people would get like something out of that? Like, you should record that and put it on Spotify or put it somewhere on Bandcamp. Because I still get messages from people, because I do recovery music groups, right? Before the pandemic, I haven't done one since. For years, I would go to treatment facilities with my acoustic guitar and do, you know, the songs that were on the records. And I would have people to this day who message me and say, man, I saw you at Turning Point in Patterson 7 years ago. I'm still sober. That one song you had, I ain't gonna live like that no more. I still, every time I want to get high, I listen to it. Do you know what that means to a person in recovery and a person and a songwriter? That your lyrics are hitting somebody right between the eyes. So I was trying to get the point across. It's like, you don't understand what you just sang to me. There's going to be somebody that wants to get high that's going to listen to that and maybe put it off by a day. So, you know, it's very common. It's very common. You just think, like you were saying before, somebody was saying, you feel like you lost your edge. Let's be clear. I'm sober 36 years. I'm still a pirate.
Hell yeah, man.
Let's make that point. Did Alice ever tell you the Keith Richards, the great story?
I don't think so.
Oh my God. And I'm going to blow it. But Keith was with Alice, and Alice is telling a story, and I'm going to have to miss some of the points. But Keith says to him, I'll just pick a year. And he says, Alice, I heard you were sober. Wait, let me, I got to do this. Alice, I heard you were sober 28. I heard you were sober 28 years, man. And Alice said, yes, that's true, Keith, that's true. And Alice said, can I ask you a question? And Alice said, sure, ask me anything. And Keith goes, why? Isn't that classic?
Yeah. Yeah.
Shit.
You know, Alice has such a unique perspective on his sobriety because he, of course, was the first one that I went to because he was the closest person to me in recovery when I decided to get sober. And I struggled for about 6 weeks before the final drink. And I went to him one morning on the bus. You know, it was 6 a.m. I was hungover out of my mind. He was up drinking coffee, and we're rolling down the street in Europe somewhere. And I was like, what did you do? Like, how did you do it? What did you do? He was, you know, this is like the height of Alice Cooper heyday, and he was as bad off as anyone has ever been. And he sipped his coffee and he looked at me. He said, well, Nita, I'll tell you, God took my desire to drink away, and I've never wanted to drink again since. And I was like, that is so unhelpful.
Boom.
You know,
Give him
and
a
like,
microphone.
I
Tell him to
love
drop
that
it.
happened for him, but that is not been my experience, you know. And it just goes to show you how everyone's recovery is so different. You know, he prayed on it, and God took his desire to drink away. I prayed on it, and let me tell you, that did not happen.
And that's a whole other conversation, because everybody believes what they want to believe in recovery, you know, a higher
Certainly.
power, whatever you want to call it.
But like, how incredible that can happen. Like, how beautiful that he's now been sober, you know, 30 something years. And
also, you can imagine how many times when he was drunk on his ass on the floor, curled up, did he pray to God?
Absolutely.
You know, like we all did.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes,
like we all did. But the thing, he's a perfect example of such a wonderful man. I love Alice. And because of this, of what we're talking about. Talk about still being a pirate. This
Yes.
guy is
Coolest guy ever.
sober. He's the most normal guy in the world. And then he
Yeah.
goes on stage and he cuts people's heads off.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
And you know, his wife is not sober. His wife, they've been married 45 years, I think it is now. You know, she enjoys a glass of wine after the show. And, you know, she cuts his head off every day, you know,
yeah.
day in and day out, keeps their
But
marriage
he's the perfect
lively.
example of that, like juxtaposition. And also, let me just say, the last thing about Alice is, like, I grew up on, I played, oh my God, I played the Ballad of Dwight Fry at the Linden Beach Club in Queens when I was 14, right? And the singer
Nice.
had a straitjacket on, right? So I did an event, you know, for a recovery place up in Boston, uh, uh, Right Turn, and Alice was the guest, one of the guests, and we did like 5 Alice Cooper songs. And if you think, and this was like 8 years ago, if you think this little kid, you know, and Damon Johnson was there, of course. If you
Oh,
think
we just
this,
saw Damon last night. I
I
love
know, I
Damon.
saw that. If you think this little kid wasn't joyous, overwhelmed, to be going down, 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 down. Like I'm going, oh
The
my God,
coolest.
I listened to this when I was a kid and I'm playing with Alice Cooper. I mean, when recovery brings you like this stuff, man, that you can't, there's not enough time in this podcast to tell you about all the great stuff it brings you.
I mean,
Absolutely.
that's a perfect way to sort of sum up what we're talking about today. And I know we have to move to wrap the show in a sec, but I sort of wanted to share one quick realization and one last question for everybody. The realization is that we have talked about at least 6 different ways that sobriety can look. There's 4 of us here. We have about 100 years of sobriety combined on this call, legitimately. And we've talked about Demi Lovato. We've talked about Alice Cooper. We've talked about Nile Rodgers, and everybody's sobriety looks a little bit different. And yet here we all are living wonderful lives professionally in music, 100% sober. And that is such a fucking blessing. Whatever the blessing is, we'll let Alice figure out for us. The last
Amen.
question I wanted to put out for everybody is, you know, if you could just share one piece of advice for the musician who's watching this, who's thinking, okay, I know it's worked for them. I'm scared. Could it be for me too? What would that one piece of advice be? Nita, what would you drop on them?
Oh, I'm gonna defer while I think of my answer. I'm
Cool,
gonna
cool.
defer to the expert.
Ricky, what would you
Who
hit
is
them with?
that? I would say that this is as simple as I could say it. There's how many people estimate are there in recovery in the United States?
Around 23 and a
Millions.
half million for 24 million people.
You hear what Brendan said, 24 million people in recovery.
Yep.
Why not you? How's that? It's like, you know, we can and do recover. So, like, if you don't want to live like that anymore, then don't live like that anymore. It's like, do something, you know, pray, go to a community support group meeting, you know, do whatever you got to do. Because, again, I say the same thing. In this day and age, your next get high could be your last because we're dealing with stuff now that you don't know what you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
See, you could take a pill from somebody, from a friend at a party, and it's got fentanyl in it, and you're done. So get to lean into it, man. You know, we're out
Boom.
there, we're willing to help. All you got to do is reach out, you know. And it's my job as somebody in long-term recovery to find those people that are caught between denial and surrender in that dark hallway and just kind of go, hey, come on, this way, you know, and just kind of point them in the right direction. And if people want help, I don't chase people. I cannot chase people that don't want to get sober. If somebody wants to get sober, you know, it's like, hey, I could tell you where to go and what to do and try this and, you know, try this. They're all suggestions, right? There's no rules.
Nita, what would you share for our viewers in need?
I would say that there's a bigger distinction than you might think between I'm trying to quit and I do not partake. And that for me was the biggest realization, is that I spent a lot of time saying, oh, no, thanks. I'm not drinking right now. No, thanks. I'm not doing that today. I'm trying to cut back. I'm trying not to drink. And there's a big difference between seeing yourself as someone who's struggling not to partake and someone who does not partake. So next time you think, I'm going to try to not have one, and someone offers it to you, just say, no, thanks. I am sober. No, thank you. I don't drink. And the
Boom.
distinction, not just for the people around you, but for you mentally, reinforcing that habit of, I am a sober person, I'm a person in recovery, I'm a person that does not partake, is the biggest gift that you can give yourself in this journey. Or maybe not the biggest, but a big gift that you can give yourself on this journey, is just reinforcing that self-talk, that positive self-talk of, I do not partake, I don't do that anymore, I'm sober, I'm in recovery, instead of the, I'm trying not to drink, I'm not going to drink this week, or whatever that is.
I
And
love it,
you
Nita.
will agree with me, Nita, that we do not lose our edge.
No, come to a show and find out, baby.
There you go. That's what's important, that people know that you're going to gain stuff. You're not going to
Yes,
lose
you'll
stuff.
play tighter. Yeah, I mean, your energy will be higher. You'll be more present. You'll be more aware. I mean, ask anybody. You
Oh, and
don't take
yeah,
my word for it. Ask
let me
anybody.
add to that. I was always a good guitar player. I was a good guitar player, but now I'm rocking. And my songwriting is at
Hell yeah.
another level. I mean,
Yeah.
you really get better at everything.
Yes.
I'll share my recommendation, and then I'm going to turn it over to Brendan at MusiCares to close us out. My recommendation is something that Ricky touched on earlier. Reach out to that person you know in sobriety. Reach out to that one person you might have met who mentioned to you that they got clean. And if you don't know anybody, reach out to me. I keep my DMs open specifically for this reason, on Instagram, on Twitter. You can reach out to me directly, and you can reach out to Brendan directly at MusiCares.
Me too, man.
That's
My social media.
boom.
DM me. I'll
There
get
we
back to
go.
you.
There we go. So now you got a few people right here that you can reach out to right now. So on that tip, Brendan, I'm going to turn it over to you to close us out with your recommendation, man.
Yeah, thank you so much, Elia. If you're a music professional and you're watching this video, call MusiCares. Shoot us an email. We are here to help you, to support you in finding your path to recovery. If you're just curious and you want to hear more about what recovery might look like, what the options are for you, we're happy to have a conversation. No one is going to force you to do anything that you don't want to do, but having conversations, it's important, because you don't need to feel ashamed. You don't need to feel like a bad person. You don't need to feel like you're wrong, right? You're just dealing with something that all four of us have dealt with. And we're here to show you that on the other side, there is something incredible. You can be a better brother, sister, mother, father, son. You can be a better musician. And, all of that can be just one phone call, one text message, one email away.
And you'll be clear-eyed too.
There we go.
That's
There
true.
we
He's
go.
a prescription, by the way. I'm not trying to be a poser.
The only
Hey.
bloodshot eyes will be from seasonal allergies.
There we
That's
go.
great. And let me
Brendan,
just, can I
thank
just,
you.
Brendan,
Oh.
and you guys, let me just say again,
Yeah.
I found, so many great things to do in recovery attached to music, like my recovery music groups and this and that. But also, if I can, I'm an ambassador for allsober.com. And we're going to be doing some stuff with MusiCares. It's a really great informational platform. It's got everything on it, and it's got a really cool inspirational page. And that's all. I'm an ambassador.
You all are
Amazing.
doing incredible work. Again, congratulations to Nita on 8 years of continuous. Congratulations
Yes.
to Ricky on your 36 years, coming up on the 25th. Like,
I want my coin.
I'm going to draw one for you. I'm going to laminate it. I'm going to send it to you.
Yes. Yeah, Brendan, thank you and MusiCares for creating this space for this conversation, man. Thank you to Daniel, who's rocking tech for us, helping to make sure this is recorded properly and edited. And Ricky and Nita, thank you so much for your time. You guys are incredible, and your stories are so fucking powerful. To all of our viewers, hit us up, be in touch. We'll see you in the pit. Peace.
Thank you.